Dwight Drummond, tonight the Ford government officially pulls the plug on in-school learning this term.
So today, I have to announce that schools will not be returning for in-class learning until the fall.
Doug Ford says reopening could lead to thousands of new COVID-19 cases, but even though schools are staying closed, the Premier hints other things may open sooner than planned.
More than one student in the chat after seeing the news today was like, I'm done. I can't do online.
We'll have some of the reaction to today's decision to keep schools closed and what experts say needs to be done to help students recover. And we'll take you on board the new Crosstown LRT vehicles as they get put through their paces and the latest timing on when you might be able to ride one yourself. Ontario students will not return to in-person learning this school year. The Premier is saying today doing so could lead to thousands of new COVID-19 cases. But as he closed the classroom doors, he opened up the possibility of reopening parts of the economy sooner than expected. Lorena Redekop now with the details.
It was a hard choice to make, but I will not, and I repeat, I will not take unnecessary risks with our children right now.
Premier Doug Ford says the risk is the variants, especially the one first seen in India, now known as Delta, and the potential for thousands of new cases. He says he wants more vaccinations to happen first. He denies putting businesses before children.
All I've heard from the docs, and we've all heard the same thing, indoors bad, outdoors good. Indoors bad, outdoors good. And we're going to put 2 million kids?
But the chief medical officer said this just last week.
My position is that I've been encouraging schools to open as soon as possible.
This has been the advice from the Science Advisory Table.
If there is room for choices, schools would be the last things that I would, at least personally, recommend closing, and I'd be the first ones to, it'd be the first things to open up again.
The Premier says he plans to talk with the Chief Medical Officer about moving to step 1 of the reopening plan sooner, meaning patios could open before June 14th.
This one is just unequivocally a wrong decision. We met the threshold of 100 cases per 100,000 per week. We're actually below 50 right now in the entire province, and in most areas far below that. So, the schools have never been safer since this pandemic began.
The opposition had been calling for smaller class sizes and improved ventilation for months.
Kids need to be in school. Ontario is the only province in Canada where kids are still not back in school, where our schools are still closed. And that's on Doug Ford.
Just continue to be dumbfounded how these kinds of decisions are made.
Less than a week ago, the Premier sent a letter to medical experts and stakeholders, including teachers' unions, looking for consensus.
And we provided him with that consensus, I would suggest, if nothing else, related to opening schools regionally. And the Premier yet again ignored that input.
He says kids should be back in class in regions with few cases.
By remaining cautious and vigilant, we protect our summer. We protect September.
The Premier says he wants all school classes to be able to hold outdoor graduations so students can socialize before heading off for the summer. Lorena Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
While the announcement left some families disappointed, concerns are growing from educators that students will fall even further behind. Chris Glover looks at that side of the story.
Sure. You could tell right away. Disappointment on the diamond for this Toronto family, not to do with baseball today, learning that Ontario's students won't get into the classroom this June.
Wait, you mean like we're going to stay on online school? Oh, yeah, I do not like that decision. I feel very upset.
Why?
Because I can't really see my friends and I want to talk to my teacher a lot.
It's disappointing, but it's hard to say what's right or wrong with 3 weeks left.
To be honest, I feel relieved. The school year is supposed to be 10 months, but it feels like it's stretched for almost 2 years now.
Matthew R. Morris is a grade 7 teacher in Scarborough.
Despite all your best efforts, as a teacher, are you seeing that, and are you fearing that kids are falling behind?
Yeah, 100%. More than one student in the chat after seeing the news today was like, I'm done. I can't do online. And as much as I want them to try and persevere and show that resilience, I completely understand them. It's been such a rough year.
Research shows academic gaps are pervasive right now and most pronounced for kids from lower socioeconomic backgrounds.
I think ultimately it's going to leave a cohort and a generation of students missing some important academic benchmarks.
That's kids going out into the world with fewer skills. That's kids deciding not to go on to post-secondary. And it's a big issue for Canadian productivity.
Education researcher Kelly Gallagher-Mackay says younger students and math skills have been severely affected. She suggests in-class tutors may be needed this fall and a dramatic increase in Ontario spending.
We're double BC and Quebec's levels of closures. So, it is cumulatively going to make a difference.
We know that learning and attendance gaps have emerged due to COVID-19, and it's why we announced a plan to support learning recovery and renewal.
The education minister says more than $85 million is being spent on math and reading supports. Summer school will be the largest ever, and school mental health supports offered over the summer too.
I think practically, smaller class sizes and de-emphasizing particular things that pertain to the curriculum.
This teacher saying a strict return to basics this summer may offer the home run needed to help kids catch up. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
Ottawa says Indigenous communities can now apply for funding to search former residential school sites for the remains of students. The announcement comes just days after a preliminary report indicating 215 children were buried on the grounds of a former school in Kamloops. Olivia Stefanovich now with the latest, and a warning: details in the story may be triggering.
This is the area we want to have explored.
The task immense, but the resolve even greater.
We want to make sure if we find those kind of remains, if you will, that we want to make sure that proper protocols, the proper connections to the communities of the families that, we're connected here.
Chief Michael Starr of Star Blanket Cree Nation wants to search the grounds of the former Qu'Appelle Indian Residential School, and he wants Ottawa to pay for it.
It's their responsibility as well.
In the name of the Father.
In 2019, the federal government set aside more than $30 million. The money meant to respond to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action. The recommendations specifically related to missing children and burial grounds.
We will be there with the Kamloops and all communities across Canada.
Ottawa says communities can apply for funds starting today.
This is the communities that have to be front and center, and we have to make spaces for Indigenous voices.
But some want the government to go even further.
We heard an old man, for example, tell us that he used to see children burying children because he lived close to one of the residential schools.
This former Truth and Reconciliation Commissioner supports a demand from the UN Human Rights Office, calling for investigations into the deaths of Indigenous children and the missing.
And there's no body in Canada that monitors what Canada is doing to follow up on those recommendations. So consequently, nothing gets done.
But the government is not committing to a probe. Instead, the ministers say it's up to Indigenous communities to decide what's best for themselves, even though many say they'd welcome the accountability. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
Pressure is mounting for Ryerson University to remove the statue of founder Egerton Ryerson and for the school to change its name. Farmer Morelli has more on those calls and what the university says it is doing.
Sam Howden lays flowers at the foot of the defaced statue of Egerton Ryerson, where a collection of children's shoes is growing.
There's tobacco, there's sweetgrass, there's flowers, there's toys, and all in an effort to come together over this collective grief, and especially over the collective grief of Egerton Ryerson being the architect of the residential school system.
Howden, who is Métis, is one of the student organizers of the group University X, pushing for the Ryerson name to be removed from the school and for this statue to be taken down.
It's not just the statue itself, it's the symbolism of the person who embodies that statue and the name of that person and their history, which has been essentially the systemic violence of putting Black and Indigenous folks in segregated schooling.
It's not the first time this statue has been defaced. Last summer, members of Black Lives Matter, citing Ryerson's role in segregated schools, also called for the statue's removal. No one from Ryerson would speak to us for an interview today, but we know it launched an independent task force called Standing Strong. It says it looked at the historical research and legacy of Eglinton Ryerson. Part of that task force included consultation with students, staff, and alumni. In a statement, the university said the task force's final report will be delivered this fall. It's expected to include recommendations about the statue and principles for future decision-making about commemoration.
We've been consulting for 20 years about the Eglinton Ryerson statue and about the Eglinton Ryerson name.
Some Indigenous faculty argue leaving the statue up is an act of defiance.
I would like to see Ryerson respond this week or next week and remove this statue. I envisioned that prior to talking to you and, making my way downtown and bringing my drum and bringing the medicines, and the coming down of that statue will mean so much.
The university announced yesterday the Ryerson name would be removed from 2 student publications, but organizers of this memorial want more. They say they'll continue to call for more shoes until their calls are answered. Farah Morali, CBC News, Toronto.
Days after the province announced a shortened time between first and second vaccine doses for those 80 and over, there's growing concern that too many vaccine appointments are going unbooked. Jessica Ng is live outside the Metro Toronto Convention Centre for us tonight, one of the city's mass vaccination clinics. Jessica, what are we learning tonight?
Mayor John Tory, Dr. Eileen Davila, and Chief Matthew Pegg, they're going to be answering questions tonight in a virtual town hall. They say they're concerned about a drop in vaccine uptake, and that's particularly for those over the age of 80. Dr. Davila says she's also concerned that at least a third of 30 to 54-year-olds aren't vaccinated, and says they've hit a bit of a wall when it comes to getting people that first dose in certain age categories.
People age 60 and over are doing well, with one caveat. Their first dose vaccination rate is between 77 and 78% until you reach the threshold for 80 years of age and over. There's a bit of a lag as that age group only has a little more than 73% with a first dose. That leaves 27% unvaccinated, and that's concerning and has been concerning me for a couple of weeks now.
She pleaded to the public that if you know an 80-year-old who hasn't gotten their first dose, find out what you can do to help them get vaccinated. And Chief Pegg pointed to an alarming trend they're noticing at mass vaccination clinics like the one behind me.
Our weekly no-show average increased to 3% last week. Our team is continuing to monitor this situation closely. While no doses of vaccine were wasted as a result of no-shows, this does result in slower vaccine rollout across our city.
The city says they will be working with community organizations to continue delivering vaccines directly to seniors, and that if you do have to cancel a vaccine appointment, try to call them or go online to let them know ahead of time. Mayor John Tory used the metaphor of filling a prescription and reminded residents that the best immunity comes when you get 2 doses. Now, an hour outside of Toronto, the mayor of Whitchurch Stouffville says that vaccine bookings there have literally fallen off a cliff for seniors over the age of 80. So working with their medical officer of health and Premier Ford, today they've lowered that age requirement to 70 and above. Mayor Ian Lovett says he was alerted that 90 Moderna doses, nearly 90 Moderna doses were available for this afternoon and aren't being administered locally.
And it's just ridiculous. We have, 540 doses available. And so I got on the horn really early this morning with our Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Kurji in York Region, and asked, basically implored him to do something, because we're never going to hit our stage 2 target of second vaccinations if we don't do something.
He announced on Twitter that the Soccer City Vaccine Clinic is offering to 70 and above, and immediately seniors started spreading the word online to family and friends. He says that the 2-week early start that York Region had in delivering vaccines is what's putting them ahead of other public health units like Toronto. Dwight.
Thank you for that, Jessica. While vaccination rates have been steadily increasing in Peel Region, health officials have been approaching those numbers with cautious optimism.
Even while the stay-at-home order expires, we must continue to remain vigilant. In particular, members of the science table this week have advised Peel Public Health that B1617, now known as the Delta variant, first detected in India, is increasingly being detected in Ontario, and that Peel region has the highest proportion of this variant out of the entire province.
There are currently 97 cases of the Delta variant in Peel, but preliminary data shows that in 1 month, the variant will be the dominant strain in the region, with the rest of Ontario just weeks behind. Meanwhile, 72% of adults over the age of 18 in Brampton have been vaccinated, and over 40% of those 12 and up. Mayor Patrick Brown says Ontario should increase its supply of vaccines to hotspots to allow for an aggressive second dose strategy. If you love the heat, call it.
It's coming. Yeah, we are going to be seeing some incredible heat, Dwight, as we get towards the weekend. Humidity as well, likely going into a heat wave. That's all to come. For now, we're getting something else that we really need, and that is some rain that is on the way. Looking at our daytime highs today, sure, some mid-20s, 25 degrees for Toronto and Oshawa, Hamilton, St. Catharines. Look at Ottawa. 27 degrees there, yeah, upper 20s showing up with more sunshine through the day. A little cooler, those temperatures into southwestern Ontario. I think you can see why here because of the cloud cover, but also the rain as it's been moving in. Now, a little bit of this lighter precipitation already starting to push towards the Golden Horseshoe. You can see that from the Hamilton region around towards St. Catharines area. Much of this is so light, though. It's the steadier stuff that we're going to get into. That's going to start to come in closer towards 10, and pushing in towards midnight and through the overnight hours. Some embedded thunderstorms also possible as this system will be working its way through. So we had such a dry May, June starting off okay with at least one system, because when I look past Friday, we go into that dry spell coming up with all that heat. A lot of numbers here for you, but just giving you an idea of some of the rainfall amounts we'll be seeing. Generally, it's around that 10 millimeters, hoping to see in some cases closer to 20, though, as it becomes steadier. 14 overnight for your low. Tomorrow, 21. The system will be pulling away. We'll break out of some of that cloud cover, but still a few isolated thunderstorms will be possible, Dwight.
Thank you. And we like the fact that your jacket kind of matched your rainfall map.
I did that on purpose.
Thank you, Colette.
You're welcome.
This weather update is brought to you by Train. For a limited time, take advantage of 36 equal payments and 0% financing. It's hard to stop a train.
Durham police are investigating after a 29-year-old man was shot and killed. It happened just before midnight in Ajax. Dale Manukduk has more on what we've learned about the victim.
It happened at 1 Smith Lane, a violent scene that left blood spattered around the front door. Durham Regional Police responding to reports of gunfire around midnight.
When we arrived on scene with paramedics, we did locate a male party who had critical injuries. That male was then taken to a trauma center in Toronto where he was pronounced dead.
Ann O'Regan lives a few houses down. She was awake when she heard roughly 5 shots.
I heard the police and the commotion and the lights coming through my window, so I just went outside.
She's devastated that the 29-year-old neighbor, father, and husband is dead.
I couldn't believe it because I was just talking to him the day before and I was playing with his little boy. It just makes me want to cry. You know, that little boy is left without a dad now.
Police are still canvassing the neighborhood for evidence. The crime scene is large, the entire block taped off in front and behind. At the back of the house, the rear door is smashed and there are several evidence markers on the ground.
We're still trying to gather the evidence and determine exactly where and how it took place. So it's still early as far as suspect descriptors, but we are looking for possibly 2 suspects.
Police believe the suspects fled in a vehicle but have not determined a make or model. There are security cameras at the front and back of the residence where the shooting took place. Major Crimes Unit is in charge of the investigation. They're asking that anyone who has dashcam video or personal security footage to contact them. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Ajax.
The Quebec coroner's inquest into the death of Joyce Eshequan wrapped up today. Eshequan is the Indigenous woman who recorded hospital staff in Joliette who made abusive remarks to her before she died. Her family is hoping for recommendations that prevent others from suffering as she did. Sarah Levitt has more.
Pain, sadness, anger, a little bit of hope. All were on display today as thousands took to the streets in Trois-Rivières to honor Joyce Eshequan.
They lived with that pain for so long that it makes me emotional, you know. I think it's important that we all know about this.
We're the survivors. We're still here. We've been hurt. They tried to kill us. They tried to make us live the non-indigenous way, but we're still here. For weeks, the inquiry heard the circumstances around Eshequan's death. Insults hurled at her as she screamed in pain. She had the wherewithal to take out her phone and film what was happening on what would ultimately be her deathbed. That video served as a rallying cry, reverberating not just in her community of Manouan, but across the country. Isabel Napes drove 12 hours from the Innu community of Equanichit to be here.
We endured that, but we never show it. So now I think it's time to stand up and say enough is enough.
Nous avons le droit de rêver à un monde de bienveillance.
Inside the courthouse, Coroner Jeanne Kamel ended the hearings, speaking directly to Eshequan's husband, Carole Dubé, with a message for her 7 children.
Monsieur Dubé, il faudra leur raconter que la petite révolution de la réconciliation a débuté grâce à leur maman.
Outside, that revolution was on full display. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Trois-Rivières, Quebec.
Convicted killer and serial rapist Paul Bernardo is set to have another parole hearing this month. Bernardo is serving a life sentence for kidnapping, torturing, and killing 2 girls in the 90s, Christian French and Leslie Mahaffey. Now 56 years old, Bernardo became eligible for parole more than 3 years ago, but was denied release at a hearing in October 2018. The Parole Board of Canada says the hearing is tentatively scheduled for June 22nd. Concerns about students falling behind is growing, not only here in Ontario, but right around the world, including in the UK. We'll tell you what the British government is doing to help students catch up after the break. We mentioned the Ontario government's decision to close classrooms until the fall and the escalating concerns over students falling behind during the pandemic. In the UK, their government is dealing with those concerns today, committing billions of dollars to help students catch up. Tessa Arcilia has more now from London.
Good morning, Lola.
$2.4 billion over 3 years. That's how much the British government wants to set aside for students in England in their catch-up plan to help make up for lost education during the pandemic. That's in addition to $2.9 billion already announced. Prime Minister Boris Johnson highlighted the need to address the impact on school children, saying they will do everything they can to support children who have fallen behind. The Education Minister Gavin Williamson says they hope to help up to 6 million children, with tutoring sessions, teacher training and development, and potentially longer school days. But critics say much more money is needed. The Education Policy Institute says students have lost up to 2 months of learning in reading and up to 3 months in math. The think tank estimates a recovery plan would cost closer to $23 billion. Some teachers agree, and they stress that the catch-up plan should not just focus on academics.
If you don't put that time in to think, OK, I want that child to be brilliant in maths, but before I do, I've got to make sure his family are OK. I've got to make sure that he's OK emotionally. What you're going to end up with is people who at the end of it are going to say, do you know what? Did we actually give the best for these children? Well, we did the best that we could do with the means that we had, but the means we had weren't enough.
The planned tutoring sessions will be offered to the most disadvantaged students who need the extra support. Tessa Arcilia, CBC News, London.
We're one step closer to seeing the Eglinton Crosstown LRT up and running as the new transit vehicles were delivered to the tracks and tested.
Really exciting that we've been building the Crosstown for so long, but now we're seeing trains go onto the rails, and it feels very real now.
We'll bring you a sneak peek of what your ride may look like next. We're almost a year and a half away from the expected launch of the Eglinton Crosstown LRT, and over the past week, the new light rail vehicles have been delivered to the tracks for a highly anticipated testing. Here, Thanas Asatharan now with the details.
Shiny, new, and one step closer to opening. The last of 6 test vehicles for the Eglinton Crosstown LRT were delivered today. Testing of the tracks and LRVs is happening until September between Scarborough and Midtown Toronto.
What we've been doing is doing clearance checks So we're taking a different route each time. We ensure that the vehicle is far enough away from the poles, or the poles are far enough away from the vehicle.
The crosstown has been under construction for the last decade. The light rail transit line will go along Eglinton between Kennedy Station in the east and Mount Dennis on Weston Road in the west, connecting with subway, bus and GO lines. But the project hasn't come without delays or disruption for residents.
We know it's been uncomfortable, that they lived through tunneling. We got that all done. We got, and now all the stations that are underway. There's an end in sight, and they're going to have this great transit service right across the city that will really make a difference in their lives.
The vehicles are slightly larger than the TTC's current streetcars. Inside, the TTC's trademark red is missing. Instead, there are blue and green seats. Early tests have been positive.
Ride's great. It's brand new track, still a little rusty rails on it, so we get a little bit of slip slide. But once we get more and more vehicles running out here, it'll be great.
Reese Martin is a transit enthusiast. He went to check out the vehicles for himself. As a Scarborough resident, he's happy with the progress.
Scarborough has not seen a ton of transit investment in terms of actual physical infrastructure in the past 20, 30 years. And so it's really exciting that we've been building the crosstown for so long, but now we're seeing trains go onto the rails, and it feels very real now. It's amazing that the construction, the pain is almost over, and in a year or so, I think we can be riding this and using it.
The project's anticipated completion is for the end of next year in 2022, when the system gets handed over to the TTC for operation. Kirtan Asasi there on CBC News, Toronto.
A silver maple tree that some residents say is among the oldest trees in Long Branch is facing destruction, and neighbors are trying to save it.
It's very well known in the area. It's one of the largest and very definitely one of the oldest trees in Long Branch. Why the city is not defending this tree basically makes no sense to us. It makes no sense to the residents. It's not something that can be replaced in our lifetime.
The tree sits in the backyard of a James Street home, and it's in the way of a planned new house the owner wants to build. While residents say the tree is 160 years old, the homeowner disputes both the tree's age and its heritage value. Although the city officially objected to the plan originally, a committee of adjustment sided with the homeowner. Now, a group of residents are rallying together, spreading awareness about the tree's possible destruction.
Because Long Branch, I think, has been known for many years for its small town feel, a little countryside out here by the lake, and the fact that we've had a lot of trees disappear over the last several years, and this one, because like I said, its size and its shape, it would be a huge loss to the local area if this tree was sadly cut down.
The fight has now gone to the Toronto local appeal body. It is unclear when the planning body will rule on the silver maple's fate. The fate of these Leafs has already been determined. Yes, 2 days after the Toronto Maple Leafs suffered yet another heartbreaking playoff exit, players are still searching to find answers on where things went wrong.
It's heartbreaking, and it's extremely hard. There are no excuses for it. We just need to be better, and we need to be able to close out the series.
We're so disappointed because we had such high faith in ourselves, and I'm confident that we were a team that could do a lot of damage and be special. And obviously it hurts that we didn't live up to our own expectations. No one's feeling good about this.
The Leafs were up 3-1 in their series with the Canadiens, but the Habs stormed back to beat our Leafs in 7 games. Playoff expectations were higher this time around after Toronto finished first in the North Division standings. Now, the team's coach, general manager, and president say it's time to get back to work to ensure they can find success in the playoffs next season.
So I thought the preparation was good, but yet, as many of the players have said, there's a killer instinct that is missing that we need to address, whether that's externally or just figuring out a way for our guys to get over that hump.
We'll take appropriate time, not just myself, but our entire coaching staff, and continue discussions with our players to properly take away the lessons that we need to from this experience.
It was the 5th straight year that the Maple Leafs failed to make it out of the opening round. Toronto now has several players who will become unrestricted free agents this summer, most notably Zach Hyman and goaltender Frederik Andersen. No comment, Colin.
I know, we just keep trying to move on from this,
I
right?
asked the producer not to put it in the show, but they said it was important because, you know, it is Toronto and they are done for the year.
It is important. So is our weather. And so we're going to just segue right over into that. Hopefully it's going to make you feel better or make you feel good. There's a few good things in here. If you like heat and humidity, that's going to be coming. I'm not sure everyone loves that as much as maybe I do, but I will tell you we need the rain, and that's coming in the short term. So we do have those rain showers moving in. It becomes steadier through the overnight, even though we'll have some already that are approaching now. A few rumbles of thunder, yeah, possible tonight. Might wake you up at some point, but tomorrow too, even into the afternoon, most of this system will be gone, but there'll be enough instability that as we get some sunny breaks coming through, that's going to give us the risk of at least a few scattered to isolated storms popping up. And I'm giving you the heads up. I said it's going to be getting warm. It's going to be getting very humid as well, and so that stickiness that we feel, harder to sleep at night. So what do you need to do to get ready? I know we've already had one spell where we had the warmer conditions. This one's going to last even longer, probably going right into heat wave territory officially. So maybe you don't have air conditioning. I know not everyone does. Do you have a fan? Do you need to get a filter changed? That kind of thing. Think about it and make sure you're going to have lots of water bottles and things like that for when you're going to be outside too. Current temperatures are looking like this. After a high of 25, we're still holding at 22. There's that steadier rain that is pushing into southwestern Ontario. Quite a lot of it here. It'd be nice to bring all that in. A lot of this is going to slide just to the south of us. So along the north shore of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, we'll see a little bit more steadier rain and get a little bit more significant in terms of the amounts. But even that by tomorrow, we're seeing it's kind of already into eastern Ontario and pulling away. And that's why I say just a few kind of scattered showers or thunderstorms linger into the afternoon. Another system is going to sneak through here on Friday. It's fairly weak, but we might pick up a few showers out of that one too. So in terms of what we're looking at, yeah, maybe 10 to 15 millimeters or so. And then Friday, 26. And then look at these numbers. And the overnight lows are important too, Dwight. We're likely going to see ourselves getting some heat warnings issued as this weather comes in.
Not great sleeping weather.
No, it is not.
Thank
Sticky.
you, yes, ma'am. Online shoppers say a loophole at PayPal has allowed vendors to exploit unsuspecting buyers with a bait-and-switch scheme. They say low-quality or counterfeit goods show up in place of products advertised. Stu Mills explains.
A neat folding camp chair with an innovative rocking design, perfect for relaxing after some mountain biking.
Price looked right, and the company the ad looked respectable and based out of North America, so I decided to go ahead and take a chance and order the product.
But it took a month and a half for the portable folding camp chair to arrive, and when it did, Sean Ralph was shocked.
So this is my lawn chair. So you can see it's probably only worth a couple of bucks versus the $30 US I paid for a full-size rocking lawn chair.
Ralph soon learned that if PayPal was to help him get his money back, he'd need to pay $60 to ship the parcel back to where it came from, Hong Kong, and get proof that it had been received.
To me, it's throwing good money after bad to try and ship it back to China and may or may not get a refund.
In Castleman, this man ordered $40 in electronics, but got this instead.
I don't exactly know what it is. It looks like some sort of tape.
In his case, too, PayPal told him that to qualify for a refund, he'd need to spend more to return the trinket overseas than he'd initially paid for it. Legitimate sellers are getting caught up in the scheme, too. Casper Revenant and his partner make zombie-themed garden gnomes that they sell mainly on Etsy, but last month noticed their creations and accompanying copy popping up in dozens of bogus online ads.
It's pretty disheartening, and it's kind of like being stalked and robbed, and I don't know. It's very gross. It's not a nice feeling, and especially because thus far we haven't been able to find any recourse for it.
Scammers have figured out how to hoodwink PayPal.
Marissa Hadlin runs Facebook Ad Scam Busters, a page where she warns about the bait-and-switch tactic. She says PayPal's automated dispute process needs to be updated to catch the scammers who send junk knowing they'll get away with it. PayPal declined to answer CBC's questions. Hadlin's advice is to either use a credit card or buyer beware. Stu Mills, CBC News, Ottawa.
The federal government is once again taking steps to cool off Canada's hot housing market. Stricter mortgage stress tests are now in place in a bid to counteract historically low interest rates. For those who are already having a tough time buying a home, the new measures will make it even tougher. Peter Armstrong has more.
As you can see, we're wearing gloves. Everything's been sanitized once.
It's a weird time to buy a house. And if it wasn't stressful before the pandemic, it's reached a whole new level of anxiety. Virtual showings, multiple bids, and prices that just defy logic.
I think our real estate agent messaged us shortly after we put in our bid that there was something like 10 other offers.
Neil Pettit is a college professor in Windsor, Ontario. He and his fiancée don't live in a big city with a crazy real estate market. They make good salaries and paid off their debts, and yet...
I think the winning bid was like $100,000 over. And bid after bid we lost, competing against at least 10, it seemed like, at least 10 other bids.
Across the country, the average price of a home is up 31% since this time last year. And everyone's concerned. Buyers, agents, governments, even the Bank of Canada.
The biggest domestic vulnerabilities are those linked to imbalances in the housing market and high household indebtedness.
One potential solution is to take some steam out of the market by making it harder to get in. Buyers will have to prove they can make mortgage payments at an interest rate of 5.25%, regardless of how low their actual mortgage rate really is.
It reduces the overall that you can afford by about 5%. Is this a material change? Yeah, it is, especially for first-time home buyers.
So for now, Pettit and his fiancée are stepping away from the overheated market.
It was disappointment after disappointment until finally we just gave up. And that's, now we just sit back and wait and see what happens.
And that's what policymakers are hoping, that by making it harder for anyone to get into the market now, it may get easier to buy a house down the road. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
As we head to break, here's a look at where the markets closed today. The TSX closed down 4.5 points. The Dow up 25 points, and our dollar traded down to nearly 83 cents US. Stay with us. We're coming right back. As part of the response to the Black Lives Matter movement, there's been a push to increase Black representation in businesses over the past year. And Canada has seen some progress when it comes to the number of Black executives and board members at major companies. But is it going far enough? Jacqueline Hansen takes a closer look.
On the outside, Bay Street has been unusually quiet over the past year. But behind the scenes, conversations about change are getting louder.
Never in my life have I seen such an awareness of the criticality and importance of diversity.
Lauriane Beausoleil is starting a new chapter. After almost 40 years, she left her job as a high-level corporate consultant to be on the boards of 4 companies.
There's not a more significant role that can have an impact for change than a board.
CBC News found over the past year, the number of Black board members on the top 100 companies listed on the TSX more than tripled to 26. That's an increase from 0.7% to just over 2%. The Black North Initiative is leading the charge to increase Black representation across all executive and board roles in Canada to 3.5% by 2025.
It's a goal that we want to reach, but it's one that we want to surpass.
More than 500 private and public companies, hospitals, universities, even student associations have signed Black North's pledge. Their goal is to reach 1,000 in the next year.
I'll tell you that the progress that's been made over the course of the last year, for me, especially as a Black Muslim woman who's a refugee, has been incredibly encouraging. Every other day I go on LinkedIn and I see a new announcement and I see a Black woman and I smile ear to ear because I'm saying to myself, that is me.
High-level hiring is still often limited to who people already know.
A lot of leadership over the years has been recycled because of that.
Last July, Jason Murray founded BIPOC Executive Search to help companies find more diverse talent.
We are doing the work to really make sure that we amplify voices that are often not heard at the table because it's needed and it's necessary if we're going to see change.
Beausoleil plans to do whatever she can to hold the door open behind her so more diverse leaders can follow.
And that would be the most powerful legacy I could have.
In hopes that the momentum of the past year is just the beginning. Jacqueline Hansen, CBC News, Toronto.
This week marks the start of Pride Month celebrations, and more than 100 Ontario Catholic schools are joining in by raising the Pride flag for the first time. And while many are welcoming the show of support, others are insisting it doesn't belong. Ellen Morrow has that story.
What does it mean to you, seeing the flag here?
You know, to me, it means hope for the future.
Hope grade 11 student Marcos Fonseca did not always have.
Thought about giving up, you know, taking my own life.
Fonseca is bisexual, has struggled with reconciling his sexual identity with his Catholic faith.
To see this flag tells me that, you know, we're heading towards a better future. You know, we can love who we want and we can be happy for who we are.
This Pride Month, several Catholic school boards across Ontario are flying the Pride flag for the first time.
How do you feel seeing it right there?
Oh, I think it's amazing.
Terry Finucane never thought it would happen. Finucane, who is gay, taught at Catholic schools for decades, hiding his sexual identity.
For so long, LGBTQ students and staff as well have been completely left out of the conversation. Just people pretended that they didn't exist.
But there's anger, too. This protest at the Toronto Catholic School Board. Some parents and church leaders say flying the flag goes a step too far.
For them to say, well, I want to live a life according to what the pride, the gay pride flag and movement promotes, then says, well, I'm sorry, but that's not in line with our Catholic teaching.
In Halton, where the board voted against flying the flag, some parents want to see it at their kids' schools.
We as parents, we as allies, that we see you, that we care about you.
Fonseca says raising the Pride flag does not diminish the school's Catholicism, it exemplifies it.
Being Catholic isn't about condemning others. It isn't about judging others. We need to love and accept each other, no matter who we are, no matter our differences, no matter what we do.
Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Toronto.
Stopping the spread of COVID-19 has consumed public health experts around the world for over a year now. Helping with that message inspired the imagination of a PEI student. He created a prize-winning video about how to prevent transmission using dominoes to explain.
Wear a mask. Masks work by protecting others from your moist speaking.
Hello, my name is Etienne Folks. I go to École Française Bruat. I am in 11th grade, and I have recently won the Occupational Health and Safety Award for the video contest. I did the Occupational Health and Safety Leadership Program with Workers' Compensation Board. They had us advertise this contest that they were holding. I was like, wow, well, maybe I should enter in that. And then once I found my dominoes, I said, wow, this would be such a great subject and such a great medium to be able to convey my ideas, and it really all just fit together.
Self-isolate when you're required to.
So the rules of the contest, on the provincial level, it had to be a maximum of 2 minutes, and it had to cover the topic of how you can reduce the spread of COVID-19. And then on the national level, it was all around work safety. So my video fit into both those categories, so it was eligible for both of those. At the provincial level, the prize was $1,000 for me and $1,000 for my school. And then at the national level, it was $2,000 for me and $2,000 for my school. When I won, it was early April, and I found out right here, and I opened the window and I screamed to my dad, who was downstairs. I was so excited, I really couldn't believe it. And then at the national level, I found out I won during the opening week of work safety in Canada, and that was during a Zoom call with Anne Tenier, the president of CCOHS, and she announced that I won first place, and I really couldn't believe it because all the other videos were so amazing too, and I was just speechless.
Congratulations, Etienne. That was really creative, Colette.
Very creative. Must be so satisfying to push that first one down and watch it all go, right? Yeah. Good for him. Let me show you what's happening. Also good for us that we're getting this rain moving in. More of a soaking rain at this time in southwestern Ontario, especially where we get into some of the yellows here and that coloration. You can see towards the UP of Michigan pushing that way. Some thunderstorm activity. We could have a few rumbles of thunder overnight tonight. Still starting to just kind of see this trying to poke its nose in. Hamilton is reporting a little bit of light rain shower activity right now, and you'll get it a little bit spotty. It becomes much steadier later on tonight as we get past 9 o'clock, and then through the overnight hours, we're going to see more of a steadier rain coming through. So this does linger into the early part of tomorrow morning, and then it starts to break up, and by afternoon, we'll see a diminishing risk of showers, a few scattered showers or thunderstorms possible into those afternoon hours. So 14 tonight. Tomorrow, a little cooler than today. Today we were up to 25 degrees, so tomorrow 21. But if you're looking for the heat, you don't have to look or wait long. So Friday, 26, a few scattered thunderstorms as a weaker system moves through. It's as we get into the weekend and well into next week. I'm seeing this extended towards the end of next week, where we're going to be into this kind of heat. First, the humidex around 35. By the time we get to Monday, Dwight, up to 40. So we are getting into not only heat wave territory, but some heat warnings as well coming out.
We're going to be begging for the rain to come back to cool us down.
We will be.
Thank you, Colette.
Welcome.
That is our show for tonight. Thank you for joining us. We will see you back here tomorrow at 6. Have a great night and stay safe, everybody.